Hi. You're obviously attracting a lot of attention these days with your NASA channel.
Yeah, NASA took out NASA television on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And we'd like to know a bit more about you. What's your background? What made you a sudden specialist with the shape of the Earth?
Well, if I tell you it's a certain thing, and without having an instrument to prove it for over 1,000 years, let's say 500, I'll be generous, and there's no instrument or exploration of the surface, but you tell everybody it's that, if you're wrong, are you going to tell everybody?
Good question.
There's a lot riding here. Everybody who's got a degree in physics, the credibility of every university institution over the past 500 years, the concept of Darwinism, evolution, where we're from. If they lie about the shape, everything falls apart. Even the notion of scarcity, especially if there's more real estate, more land, more resources, more oil.
What's your background, your studies, what?
Self-taught, high realist painter. Started painting at the age of 3. So before my brain was gotten a hold of by curriculums and schools, I was already well on my way in understanding perspective on the horizon line. Like how to draw perspective, three-dimensional reality form. My goal at a very young age was to be able to reproduce paintings that looked like reality, like a camera took it. It's just this weird fetish I've always had since I was very young. When you would look at an image, I would have the photo right next to the image, and I'd really get off on confusing people whether they could decide. And I'd say, which one's the photo? And I would get off. It's been this freaky fetish I've always had to watch people's eyes sort of scramble. And it would come up closer, and I'd be, no, 6 feet. You have to decide from 6 feet. In this case, when it comes to a picture of the Earth from space, not only will no one ever go up in a rocket to check out if it does look like that, but it's more than the distance of 6 feet.
So you were hired by NASA not because of your knowledge in astronomy, just because of your talent at painting?
They enjoyed the way I painted things made things look real, like my understanding of light. How I could take something that doesn't exist in reality. After a certain point, I surpassed needing photos, and I could basically construct things that don't exist, understanding how light would hit form. And they recruited me after a vernissage, after I graduated from political science intelligence at a Jesuit school in Canada, known as St. Francis Xavier. They recruited me at a university exhibition.
And what was your job like?
Well, in the beginning it was like, we'd like to see some samples of textures and stuff like that, and they started really pushing me into using, different types of spill effects and stuff like that. They already had an idea, like they seem to already have this system of textures or ways to make textures. So they asked me to, I guess I was just filling in on somebody else's work, like a predecessor who went into retirement. And once in a while I would get calls from a gentleman who was the head of the graphics department, and he'd ask me to change the color on things or the lighting. And then what they would do is they would send me like a drawing or an architectural drawing of like an instrument that might be scouting the surface of a celestial body, be it a moon or a planet. And then they would ask me to transpose these objects on the textures, and they would give me certain directions of like the light is at this angle, this time of the day, at this intensity, and then I would have to make the shadows congruous to the information they would make, and I'd have to make it look real.
And can you explain to us what happened between your steady job that you just described and...
It wasn't steady. It was on and off, and it was freelance.
Okay. And what happened between that period and now? What is the turning point that made you totally dissociate yourself from what you were working for?
Was about a year after I met some of the people I was working with over the phone and on computer at a function, and I think it was kind of like somewhat of an initiation to this division of NASA. And there was one gentleman there that didn't work for NASA, but he was like a consultant for the U.S. Defense Department, GPS, and NASA. And he was a physicist and a painter. Very interesting combination. He was a well-known astrophysicist and a photorealist painter. Most people in the mainstream know him as a well, not even the mainstream, but in the physics circles, know of him as a scientist, but they didn't know he had this knack of photorealistic painting. And it's something they kind of kept under wraps. With me, however, I was, a very good photorealist painter. I would say I was better than him, and I was better at recreating textures that don't exist. And there was a party at somebody's cottage in the Hamptons, and the power went out, and it was about 1 o'clock in the evening, and there was one gentleman who was friends with this guy. He was this consultant for the U.S. Defense Department. Now, this guy was basically a friend of one of my superiors and a colleague. And basically, they started to, I think the conversation started turning around like something about GPS coordinates weren't working or something concerning Antarctica, and so then he made a crack. This gentleman was working for them both as a consultant, so it was like, I was like, well, so you should go out there and just and check this thing out, see if it's still functional. And then somebody made a quip to the effect that, well, if he goes out that far, he ain't coming back. And I asked, like, what do you mean, like, well, why wouldn't he come back if it's like if he can go back on his, because GPS doesn't reach that far. And then I was like, well, why doesn't GPS reach that far? I mean, is it too cold? And it's like, it's because it's flat. And they started laughing. They all started laughing. And my superior had quite a weird smirk on his face. He was watching me to see how I would take all this. And there was no lights on, and they had candles that they just lit. And then basically, he took out some chalk, and it was like a cement sort of plank floor of some sort, and he started drawing out the Earth, all the continents exactly, but how they function, everything, physics, science, how everything we understand in movement of energy and objects in this new or hidden science, hidden from the public, how everything is caused by temperature, as opposed to like this very evasive notion of energy with Einstein and Hawking, that there's 3 ingredients to make a universe: energy, mass, and space. It was temperature. Temperature was why there's mass and energy.
And you believed him right away?
It made a lot of sense. But he basically started to avert everything. And they were kind of laughing, but they were they were listening to him. He seemed to be like kind of like this guy who was just this weird, I thought he was some sort of nut that these guys, like he's basically just like picking apart everything that they know or that they say every day in the office. He was basically explaining the flat earth and how it works. And he literally drew the UN flag. And I thought this is a joke on me. This is some sort of initiation to see if I'm stupid or to see if I'm going to buy this. I thought they were fucking playing with me to see if they could convince me it was flat. And what was creepy about the whole thing is that they were more laughing at me for not getting it. It never went back to it being a ball with these gentlemen that night. It might have been that at the office the next day, in front of everybody else, the underlings, but, and then for weeks, I couldn't think everywhere I went, every time I saw the picture of the Earth, it was like just a logo. It was a painting. It was a graphic. And then I started to scrutinize the actual images of the Earth they claim are photos. And it just started looking silly, like a cartoon. Like, why is the water so blue if it's reflecting the blue atmosphere, but I could still see the brownness of Africa? Like, wouldn't I be seeing Africa through the blue atmosphere? Like, why is the green and the brown of continents so clear with the blue of the water when the water of the oceans is just reflecting the blue atmosphere? And how come the whole thing, being 3 parts water, isn't reflecting the blackness of space? Like, I started seeing all these flaws. And the more and more I tried to prove this guy wrong, or just to find out if they were joking or pulling my leg, the more I realized they weren't joking.
What do you think you were the one that they spoke about? That they told that to?
I think there was some projects coming up down the pipeline, Mars, a few things that they wanted to know. I think the whole thing was to see how I would play ball. Like, let him in on it. He'll ask more questions, and we'll study his reaction. And if he has the proper reaction to maybe be part of the deception, we'll let him in on the next project, the next contracts that we want him to falsify, the next images we need him to counterfeit.
How many people were told the same information in the
These guys were all privy to it, but these guys were all high-placed people at NASA and the U.S. Defense Department.
Any other colleagues of your level that were aware also?
No. Everybody at my level was doing graphics, doing prototypes, and they would never believe. And what am I going to do? I'm going to tell them? Well, then they're going to tell them. So I was really alone in this situation. And I did more and more research, and every time I came up to where to prove an equation, it was supported by an event that was created through mass media caused by NASA. Be it the moon landing, be it this, and then it was the moon rocks, and then Van Brouwer going to Antarctica to pick up rocks like 2 years before the first moon mission. Then the rocks just looked like, and then it came out a couple of years ago that John Glenn, when he went on this world tour to sort of like do a PR campaign, hey, we went to the moon, and he gave rocks to the Queen of England, and she gave those rocks to the museum in Amsterdam, and up until a couple of years ago, they found out that was just petrified wood. It wasn't a rock from the moon at all. So, I mean, like, everything's starting to come out now, but it's said once in the newspaper, almost like it's a revelation of the method, a he on everybody.
And how did you deal with having the information in your head and continuing to work on the projects you were hired for?
Well, after a while, extensions changed, numbers were dead, and I was not acknowledged. I didn't get through. I mean, even people I worked with, the agency said that they never even worked for them. So the whole thing looks like it's just like, so I look crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling you, like, the guys I work with, when I called back, didn't, like, the agency saying they never worked for them, which I pretty much imagine is what they're saying right now, or what they were going to say about me was the same thing. I mean, go ahead, call them up, ask if Matt Boyland, the comedian, ever drew paintings for NASA. I watched this deception continue, and everybody invisibly worship a painting like some sort of religious icon. Because that's what it is. No one's ever going to see it at that distance, and yet it's taken for granted. That's it. Yeah, that's the Earth. But they're never going to go to the North and South Pole. Well, the South Pole is really how this conspiracy works, because it's really 360 degrees around our continents, which huddle around the North Pole.
We know that you're very vocal these days about this topic.
I also became very vocal to protect myself.
When is the first time you actually spoke about it?
Live?
To another person? It was live?
No. Well, at first I had a girlfriend. We're no longer together. She worked for the government, and She was actually there. She was at the party when the power went out, and then this conversation happened. And so, if she wasn't there, and then I came home and told her this, she would have thought I was nuts. But because there was some very influential, highly placed government officials working internationally, I had someone to exchange with on this concept. Our relationship collapsed. It didn't work for other reasons, but the exchange of like the fascination, the discovering, it was literally like discovering a whole new planet, and the romance of Columbus, and how things really work, energy, science, temperature, how much land is there. Like, is everybody just following GPS corridors in the oceans and in the air? Yes. Do all the commercial flights hub through the northern hemisphere? Yes. And finding out how they plug all these holes so no one will find out. I bounced it through a few people who had very high praise in my talent, and I had to explain to them very, very precariously, because I didn't want them to know I was actually doing graphics for them. I wasn't allowed to tell anybody that I was actually working for them doing freelance graphics, because it's perjury. It's basically I'm putting my neck out, and I'm also like apparently putting the national security of the country or the nation or the agency at risk by talking about the projects I was on. I was just making paintings of outer space.
Some people tend to believe that you're talking this way, you're proposing such a thing just to attract the attention.
Big time. The more people that hear me say this, the more time I'm buying for myself.
So you don't mean it, you just want to attract the attention? Is this what you're saying?
I'm trying to live, protect myself, and also...
what do you need to protect yourself?
I think the more people know this, the better off they'll be, humanity will be. Look, it's been 500 years. People go, wow, you're telling me to go, not only go back 500 years when we used to think it was flat. Actually, it was way before that. And I mean, everybody's in a dream. Their reality is from the military. This cannot continue. The militaries of this world are what is dividing and conquering everybody in these little eugenics events they call world wars. And basically, instead of rounding up people and then firing them because they're stupid and there's too many of them and they're eating everything, why don't you just let them know there's more land?
Do you think you're reacting right now the way they planned you would react?
I don't know.
How do you think they were
hoping I would react?
Yes.
Well, I think that they were hoping that I would like laugh and be part of the group, the illuminated, and all right, so let's have a good like slap on the back, and let's see how far we can take this lie and keep it from them. While we
how far do you think they would have sent you in the other direction if you would have just left?
I don't know what they were planning. They could have used me to, I don't know, maybe stage a false alien invasion, mixing fantasy visuals with android technology or nanotechnology. There's fusion going on too with smoke and mirrors. It's not just illusion with images, and there's actual technology going on here. So when you're fusing the two together, I mean, holographs in the sky, hologramic events.
You were talking earlier about the need to protect yourself. Why would you need to protect yourself now that you have
I went vocal because I decided to keep this within the council of people that I trust, and then basically get my argument and take stock of everything that just happened. And once I knew how I was going to what was really going on, what happened to me, what they were planning, and what has been done for the past 500 years, Then it was about sharing counsel with very, very smart individuals close to me and developing a way to release this worldwide.
Through comedy, for example.
Pretty much.
How could we take you seriously since you're a stand-up comic now?
Well, I think the key here is you don't take me seriously. It's just a show, and we're in a free society. So, I should be allowed to say whatever I want.
I can't believe this guy is like a judge. I can't believe judges are judges. I can't believe... there's so many laws now, I wish I could pass a law to stop the laws. You know, but you can't because the laws are passing the laws and the people. It means when a judge says you're out of order. You're out of order, young man, you're not... Da, 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 da. It's like, I'm out of order. You're the one with the fucking white wig. On that high desk with a wooden hammer and a black dress. Fucking weirdo. I'm crazy or you're crazy? You're wearing a white wig, Your Honor, and you got a wooden hammer and you're getting mad and you hit it. Fucking, who's nut bar here? You're out of order, buddy. You're a fucking throwback from like the medieval era or something. Got somebody from the medieval era telling me I'm not sane or something. That's great with the white wig and the dress.
So where do you stand, would be my next question. Do you think it's funny? Do you want to play with people's mind? Or
Well,
you
I'll
do
be honest
believe
with
it?
you, it is extremely funny. On many levels.
Such
Pick
as?
the one you want. Well, it's funny for them because they're laughing at everybody. It's funny for me because I get to laugh at them failing at fooling the world, and I'm letting them in on it. It's funny for me to know and anticipate how the Star Trek NASA-phile Einsteinian astronaut nerds are going to react to me proposing this. And then already knowing their comments, their stupid insults, their fanatic reactions when they can't handle what I'm saying. So it's funny in that level. So it's like every day I wake up, I open up the NASA channel, I look at the comments, and I'm literally battling zombies that are coming at me.
What is the worst comment we've ever made? Any insults or threats?
Well, I find that now there's always the generic get your tinfoil hat, or put your tinfoil hat, and they all think they're original. I don't approve those comments. I do approve comments on it. I pent for approval, because I just want to debate. I don't want fanatics like Star Trek fanatics or heliocentric Einstein Newtonian freaks who just repeat what they were told in some school program, never went anywhere in a fucking rocket or at NASA, insulting me. So I keep the debate. And if you have like a conventional response to what I'm saying, I will show you the other way.
Yes, and in the...
But when it comes to threats, I find that just completely freaky. And now, since I've been doing this, I've been taking this worldwide in front of audiences, now there's inadvertent sort of threats on my life being made. Like, you will die, accidents will happen.
How do you deal with this?
I deal with it like I'm dealing with a fanatic. Because a fanatic is someone who will have an irrational, highly negative, emotional, borderline violent reaction to just questioning their belief system. I wait for the day where everybody will throw out that religious symbol called the globe. The globalists all stop.
How do you see it as a religious symbol?
Well, when you have that kind of fanatic reaction to saying it's not that, and you actually stand your ground proving how it's clever events orchestrated by one group to support Newton, Copernicus, the fact that we actually go around the sun, and don't go snooping around Antarctica unless you're a scientist approved by the Southern Treaty Project. And it's funny because you'll never see anybody actually talk bad about the Pentagon, who work at the Pentagon or at NASA. It's like we're supposed to believe that these are the only these organizations, everything's hunky-dory, and everybody just has a great work environment. There's no complaints. There's nothing weird going on there. People better wake up. When you work at NASA, you sign very, very strict confidentiality agreements when you're working in any department, especially the Pentagon. Your life is at risk. This is one of the reasons why, one of the reasons why when I was recruited, first as freelance to do texture graphics, nebulous texture graphics, almost like they would do these sort of texture samples that they could use in layer masking when creating. I didn't know this at the time, but I would send in these textures. They would be paint spills and different things, and sometimes they would ask for a realistic rendering of like a moonscape or what it would be like. They would say it's got Europa is ice and and they would explain the temperature and what they were looking at and the light intensity of where it would be juxtaposed to Jupiter with where the sun would be at a certain time of the year. And then my job was to realize this realistically, right? Much like Stanley Kubrick, took all of Newtonian physics and the way we view the universe in the 20th century before they even went up in a rocket and made it look real on screen. So, and a lot of people do this when they're like doing the renderings for like, new shuttles, new prototype equipment, what it would look like, how it would work. Everything in the world is drawn first. Money is drawn. The most important things that rule your mind are drawn. The dollar bill is drawn. The Queen of England on a pound. Flags. And in this case, we have an image everybody veneers and worships invisibly. Because it becomes worship when it becomes iconic and you've never seen it from that point of view. Like Christ or God. We've never seen the earth from the distance in outer space looking back at it that we so associate as Earth as a ball from that moon mission. And there are certain things that have come to my trained eye that are inconsistent with how the UV spectrum in our gaseous Earth's atmosphere creates a blue spectrum works when reflecting the blackness of outer space and seeing the clear brown and greenness of continents while seeing the clear blueness of oceans, and yet not seeing the contours of a continent through the bluish atmosphere that is our Earth's air. So these things don't make sense. Also, when they show 3D rotation, what they claim is satellite tracking footage of the Earth in rotation, time-lapse speed, sped up. The clouds aren't morphing and changing. If I were to film clouds from the Earth's point of view, looking up over the course of a day, rolling in and rolling out, or keep my camera trained on a cloud. I mean, keep your eye trained on a cloud while you lie down in a field. It will morph and change.